It started as just another magical night on The Tonight Show until Tom Holland saw something that made him stop mid-sentence and changed everything forever. Studio 6B was buzzing with an electric energy that only came with certain guests. Tonight, Tom Holland was returning to The Tonight Show to talk about his latest blockbuster film and the challenges of performing his own iconic stunts. The iconic New York City skyline glittered through the studio's massive windows, creating the perfect backdrop for what everyone expected would be another charming conversation, filled with Tom's youthful energy and Jimmy's infectious enthusiasm. The audience was a sea of excited faces, camera phones, and fans glowing with the kind of joy that comes from being in the same room as a globally recognized star. Jimmy had been looking forward to this interview for weeks. Tom always brought something special to the show, whether it was an incredible behind-the-scenes story, a heartfelt moment, or those flashes of vulnerability that reminded everyone why he'd become one of the most beloved actors of his generation. What nobody noticed during the pre-show excitement was the quiet man in row 3, seat 5. Mr. Arthur Finch, 50 years old, sat perfectly still in his simple tweed jacket, holding a faded object carefully in his hands. The object was a script, small, worn, tied with twine, and visibly yellowed from time and handling. To everyone else, it looked like an obscure piece of film memorabilia or a prop from a past production. But for Arthur, it was the most precious piece of paper he owned, a piece of unexpected fate. He had found the script about 15 years ago, tucked into a public rubbish bin in a rainy London park, a random act of cleanup that changed his entire family's future. He'd kept the script tucked away, often thinking about the ambitious young writer who had thrown away such a beautiful, hopeful story. The script only had 2 words written on the cover in faint pencil: Tom, Dreams of Flight. Arthur had reread the ambitious story countless times, about a boy who truly believed he could fly if he never stopped dreaming, passing the lesson on to his son. Tom had begun the interview, never imagining the lost piece of his past was sitting just yards away. The show opened flawlessly. Jimmy's monologue was sharp and topical, earning genuine laughter from the audience. When he introduced Tom Holland, the applause was deafening. The entire studio was on its feet, showing the kind of genuine excitement that reminded everyone why live television could be magical. Tom walked onto the stage in a sleek, dark suit that caught the studio lights perfectly. He hugged Jimmy warmly, waved to the audience with his characteristic boyish charm, and settled into the guest chair with the easy confidence of someone who understood his unique platform. "Tom Holland, everybody," Jimmy said, settling behind his wooden desk. "Thank you so much for being here. The new movie is incredible. And I have to ask, the process of performing those insane stunts, does it feel different now approaching these physical challenges with all the experience you've gained?" Tom smiled, that genuine smile that had endeared him to millions. "You know, Jimmy, it's been such a learning journey. When I approach these roles now, I hear them through the lens of everything I've learned about physical limits, failure, perseverance, and growing up in the industry. They mean something different now, something deeper." As Tom spoke, his eyes naturally scanned the audience, a habit he developed from years of understanding his fans' intensity. Always trying to connect with individual faces in the crowd, that's when he saw him. Arthur in row 3, holding that small, distinct yellowed script with an intensity that went beyond typical fan excitement. But it wasn't Arthur's intense focus that caught Tom's eye. It was the script itself, specifically the faded title on the front cover, the twine binding it. Tom's storytelling rhythm faltered slightly. Something about the script's specific binding, the faded paper, and the way the man held it spoke to Tom in a deep language that transcended simple words. "Actually, Jimmy," Tom said, his voice shifting to a softer register, a tone of confusion mixing with wonder. "Speaking of the beginning of my career and childhood ambition, I'm noticing something incredibly familiar in the audience right now." Jimmy looked surprised, but deeply curious. Tom rarely deviated from their planned conversation flow. Tom stood up and walked toward the edge of the stage, his eyes finding Arthur again. "The gentleman in row 3 holding that small, very old script, would you mind standing up for a moment?" Arthur's eyes went wide with shock. He looked around frantically, pointing to the script with a confused expression. The audience turned to look at him, and he felt the intense lights on his face, mixing nervousness with profound destiny. "Yes, you," Tom said gently, his voice carrying the warmth of genuine, sudden memory. "I couldn't help but notice that script you're holding. I feel like it has a very personal story." Jimmy was now standing too, immediately intrigued by the direction this was taking. In all his years of hosting, he'd learned to trust moments like this when something completely real was about to happen. Arthur slowly stood up, his legs feeling unsteady. He instinctively clutched the script tighter, the paper his connection to a secret past. "What's your name, sir?" Tom asked, his voice carrying clearly across the studio. "Arthur," he replied, his voice barely audible, even with the studio's advanced sound system. "Arthur Finch." "Arthur, that's a fine name," Tom said. "And that script, it looks ancient. What is it?" Arthur shook his head, a faint, complex smile on his lips. "It only says 2 words on the cover, sir. Tom, Dreams of Flight." The studio fell completely silent, the title ringing loudly in the massive space. Even the Roots stopped their gentle background music. Jimmy felt the shift instantly. This wasn't an interview about cinema. This was about to become something much more important. "Dreams of Flight," Tom repeated softly, his eyes wide. I wrote that," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. "I wrote that when I was 14 years old. I thought it was lost forever when my family moved house." "Where did you find it, Arthur?" "In a rubbish bin, sir," Arthur said, his voice stronger now. "In a park bin in London, about 15 years ago. It was crumpled, but the twine was still tied." Tom felt overwhelming nostalgia and shock. He'd never told anyone outside his family about that script, a painful memory of throwing away his early ambitious dreams. But something about this moment, this man, this small discarded piece of paper, hit him profoundly. "Arthur," Tom said, "would you mind if I came up there and heard the rest of the story? I have a feeling that script was pretty special." Jimmy immediately understood the gravity. "Tom, go," he said without hesitation. "We'll wait." Tom Holland, one of the biggest stars in the world, left the stage and walked into the audience. The cameras followed him, but everyone in the studio somehow understood that this wasn't about getting good television footage. This was about something much more sacred, the journey of an idea. Tom reached Arthur's row, and the people around them quickly shifted to make space. He sat down in the empty seat next to Arthur, and for a moment, the global superstar was just another person wanting to hear about the life of a story he thought he'd abandoned. "Tell me what happened when you read it," Tom said simply. Arthur's composure broke slightly. "It was the beautiful story of a boy who believed he could fly," he said, holding back tears. "I was going through a very dark time, sir. I felt like I had thrown away all my own dreams years ago. Your script, your words, saved me that winter." Tom gently touched the script on Arthur's knee. "It's incredible that you kept it." "I read it often over the years," Arthur whispered. "It was the most inspiring thing I owned. It reminded me to chase something bigger, something hopeful. I had a young son at the time, still confused about his path. After reading your story, I encouraged him to pursue his wildest dream, film school." "What did your son decide?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Arthur looked down at the script, then back at Tom. "He went. He graduated top of his class. He said he wanted to tell stories that could save people, just like yours saved me." "He spent years studying in America," Arthur said, his pride immense. "He wanted to work with the biggest dreamers he could find. He never let go of that dream, never gave up on the idea of flight. Behind the scenes, Jimmy made a rapid decision that would define this moment forever. He walked down from the stage and joined Tom and Arthur in the audience, abandoning every protocol of television production. "Arthur," Jimmy said gently, kneeling in the aisle beside their row, "where is your son now? What would he say if he could see you and Tom right now?" Arthur looked at the script, then at Tom, then at Jimmy. "He'd probably be mad I'm crying. he said with a small, watery laugh. He always said my tears were a waste of good light. Tom laughed softly, but his eyes were full of unshed tears. He sounds like a wise man. What is his name? Leo, Arthur said, the name strong. Leo Finch, and he'd say thank you for the story that started it all. Tom felt something profound break open in his chest. That script, which he thought was lost and meaningless, had launched an entire career. Tom stood up and addressed the entire studio. Everyone, I want to tell you about Arthur Finch. He saved a dream that I had thrown away. He kept this script for 15 years, and because he believed in its message about finding the courage to fly, he inspired his own son to follow his dream. The audience was completely quiet, hanging on every word. Tom turned back to Arthur. Arthur, your son is still chasing those dreams of flight, isn't he? Where is he working now? Arthur smiled, tears returning. He is, sir. He's currently working as an intern, right here in New York. He managed to get onto the production team of your latest film. He's working with the dreamers he always admired. Tom paused, his voice dropping to an absolute whisper. Wait, Leo Finch? Is he here tonight? Arthur simply nodded. He is, sir. He wanted to be here to witness the full circle. Tom looked around the studio, his eyes searching. Leo, where are you, mate? A young man, barely older than Tom himself, stood up from the crew area in the corner, holding a headset in his hand. He was visibly trembling, his face a mixture of terror and immense pride. Tom's eyes welled with fresh, uncontrollable tears. Leo, Tom said, his voice breaking, you're the man who finally came home. Leo walked down the side aisle and joined his father, Arthur, and Tom on the studio floor. Your story, Tom, the one about flying, Leo said, his voice clear but filled with emotion. It inspired my dad and his story. The fact that he saved the script inspired me to believe in the path. Tom took the script and looked at it one final time, tracing the title. I guess, Tom whispered, placing the script gently in Leo's hands. It really came full circle. The dream found its destination. Jimmy, completely speechless, just placed his hand over his heart. The entire studio remained silent, witnessing the perfect closure of an accidental piece of fate. Tom reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn airplane lapel pin. This pin, Tom said to Leo. I've worn it since my first big role. It's a reminder to always aim high. It was a gift from my first acting coach. I want you to have it, Leo. Not because you're working on my film, but because your family taught me that inspiration never truly gets lost. Tom gently placed the pin into the lapel of Leo's shirt, right over his heart. You keep the script, Leo, Tom said. You and your father deserve it. You made the story real. Tom looked at Arthur and smiled, then pulled both father and son into a deep, spontaneous hug. The hug was not staged. It was gratitude, respect, and closure all wrapped into one perfect human moment. The audience began to stand, quietly, respectfully. They didn't cheer. They simply honored the sacred, beautiful exchange that had just unfolded. Jimmy finally broke the silence, his voice thick with profound emotion. He nodded to the band leader, who understood instantly. The Roots played a single, gentle, clear piano note that sounded like a sigh of relief and profound understanding. The note hung in the air, a final punctuation mark to the long journey of the discarded dream. Tom, Arthur, Leo, Jimmy said, his voice carrying the weight of the studio. Tonight we all learned that the stories we forget are often the ones that save others. And that inspiration never truly gets lost. It just patiently finds new hands to carry it forward. Tom nodded, tears finally streaming down his face. I thought I threw away my dreams in that bin, but it turns out I just mailed them to the future. The camera zoomed in slowly on the script, resting securely in Leo's hands. The title, Dreams of Flight, glowing under the stage lights. Tom looked at the camera, his eyes shining with profound realization. Never stop dreaming of flight, mate, he whispered. The screen faded to a quiet, lingering black. the segment instantly became one of the most unexpected viral moments in the show's history. It wasn't the celebrity that mattered, but the perfect narrative loop it captured. Tom Holland kept the lapel pin off his jacket, giving it to Leo as a permanent promise. He often recounts the story, saying it changed his perspective on his early failures. He realized that sometimes failure is just redirection. Leo Finch went on to become an invaluable member of the film's production team, his career officially launched by a script found in the trash. Arthur Finch finally found closure, knowing the one good thing he had done that winter had created a lasting legacy for his son. The Dreams of Flight script rests today in a protective case, symbolizing the beginning and the perfect circle of two careers,